Well, it's June now, which means we're at the halfway point of 2020. WWDC is right around the corner. So I thought I would make this video to talk about which Apple products you should avoid at all costs right now, either because they're lackluster, something older is better, or because there's something newer right around the corner. So today we're going to talk about 5 Apple products that you shouldn't buy. So to start on this list, we have the one product that we are usually pretty confident about, and that is the iPhone. The iPhone 11 and 11 Pro have been out for more than 6 months at this point, which means that they're probably something that you should be avoiding. We're at the halfway point in the year. There's always an iPhone every year, which means more of this year has passed than will pass before we see a new iPhone. Simple math. Now, from where we're standing right now, iPhone 12 looks to be a very exciting update, but it's also going to be a little bit later due to supply chain restrictions. So it's looking like we might not get an iPhone until October, November, depending on when we get an announcement or an actual ship date. But either way, I think the iPhone 12 is probably worth waiting for. So if you don't pay a ton of attention to iPhone leaks, then I'll give you a quick rundown of what we're expecting this year and why I think it makes sense to wait. Now, Apple has been really slowing down their upgrade process. They've been doing a lot more minor refreshes and a lot fewer redesigns. If you remember back in the old days, it was basically like number, number S, new number, number S, but we've kind of moved away from that. It kind of started with the iPhone 6, which stuck around for the 6, 6S, 7, and 8. Those were all pretty much the same design. And now we have the iPhone 10, 10S, and 11 Pro, which are all very, very similar in terms of design, but now it's looking like finally we're going to get a new design. Why does that matter? Well, this year we're changing up the screen sizes, which is a good thing, and there's apparently going to be 4 new iPhones this year. iPhone 12 is going to be a small one, 5.4 inches. Then there's going to be an iPhone 12 big but non-Pro at 6.1 inches, then an iPhone 12 Pro at 6.1 inches as well, and an iPhone 12 Pro Max at 6.7 inches. And supposedly that's all going to come with larger displays, slightly thinner bezels, maybe a shrinking of the notch, not really sure about that, but you can rest assured if the screen is getting bigger, the notch won't, so proportionally, I guess it would be getting smaller. Another thing that's going to be really huge is apparently we're looking at OLED displays on all of those models, so even the lower end one, which is going to start around the price tag of the iPhone 11, is going to have OLED now, which is really good news. And it's also looking pretty likely that there's going to be ProMotion on the iPhone Pro series, which is fantastic. I love ProMotion on the iPad, and it needs to make its way to an iPhone and then a Mac. Why don't we have it on a Mac? I want it on a Mac. Another thing that's not really so much of an update or a redesign, it's more of just a configuration change, is apparently all these new iPhones are going to start at 128 gigabytes. That I'm really excited for because 64 is like not really enough, and then it jumps to 256, which for me is way too much. So like, why not just go 128, 256, 512? Is that so hard? I mean, we all know they did that with the SSDs in the Mac for like 6 years. As far as exterior changes, it's looking like we're gonna have a more iPad Pro-like design with flat sides, which I personally like a lot. I'm not a huge fan of the stainless steel rails that get smudgy and gross. I don't put cases on my phone because I'm crazy, so that really, I'd like that a lot. We're also going to have a triple camera setup, but this time adding a LiDAR sensor, which, as we know from the iPad Pro, is literally going towards, well, augmented reality development and gathering data for Apple Glass, which is going to be coming next year. That's a lot of updates for the iPhone. It's been a while since we've had a big update like this, and regardless of your opinions on either of those things, I think it would make sense to wait, even if it's just a more modest upgrade. You might as well, if you can hold on to your current phone, wait and get something a little bit better for your money. So the next Apple product that you should not buy right now is the iMac. Any of them, Pro or non-Pro. The iMac is due to be updated very soon. And I'm really, really, really hoping that this time we're finally going to get a redesign. Now, in terms of just spec bumps, the iMac is still old. It got updated in March 2019. So we're looking at a decent amount over a year since the last update, which means we're due for, at the very least, a minor bump. And it's seeming likely now that we're gonna get something of a redesign. It's a little bit unclear what that's going to look like. Rumors have surfaced recently of a 23-inch iMac. What I think that means, it's a little bit weird, right? So you have these people saying there's gonna be a 23-inch iMac, but you don't hear any chatter about the 27-inch. So you'd think, well, why would they change the 23 and then not do anything with the 27? That doesn't make any sense. Here's what I think is going on here. Remember the iPad Pro update in 2018? They basically had the small iPad Pro and the big iPad Pro. And what they did was they kept the form factor for the small one the same and blew the screen up. And then they kept the screen the same on the big one and shrunk the form factor. I think that's what's going to happen to the iMac. As we well know, there's plenty of room around the screens in an iMac to make these kinds of adjustments. I mean, look behind me, look how thick those bezels are. So basically what I'm thinking is the smaller iMac is going to get a larger screen, and the larger iMac is going to shrink to fit the screen better. Personally, I'm still holding out hope for a 32-inch iMac Pro. That would be amazing. There's not really a lot of rumors to support this, but I think if you were to set up an iMac lineup where you had a 23-inch, and then a 27-inch with the smaller form factor, and then a 32-inch iMac Pro, that would be a really cool lineup. It's unlikely Apple likes to share parts, so the larger iMac and the iMac Pro are probably going to share a similar form factor, but I'm really hoping that we'll get a new iMac Pro. I love my iMac Pro. I have the 18-core Vega 64, 128 gigs of RAM, 2 terabyte SSD. Still, it's a great computer and I use it every single day. I can edit 4K on that thing without even using proxy media, just full res, not rendered, boom, going through it. If Apple were to deliver a 32-inch mini LED, modern Xeon and RDNA powered iMac Pro, I will buy that. Name your price. Do I think they're gonna do that? Probably not, because as soon as I say, hey, this is something that Apple should do, it's like they take down a notepad and they go, all right, well, make sure we don't do whatever this guy said. But regardless of what's going to happen, it's pretty clear that something's gonna happen. I think the iMac at WWDC or in a press release sort of in that vicinity is going to get an update. Now, as far as a redesign, I think it's likely that we're gonna get slimmer bezels, but we don't really know what else is going to go into this new design. Apple has been really slow with their Mac designs. We haven't seen any new designs coming out lately. The 16-inch is hardly a redesign. They just made the bezels smaller and tweaked it a little bit. The 13-inch MacBook Pro is pretty much the exact same design, but with the Magic Keyboard, and the MacBook Air is exactly the same design, but with the Magic Keyboard. So we haven't really had any new Mac designs since, well, I guess the Mac Pro. That's really the only thing in the last 3 to 5 years that's been redesigned. So as far as what that means for the iMac, it seems like we're gonna get just bigger screen, maybe a smaller form factor, maybe they'll slim the back a little bit, but it's not gonna look radically different than the current iMac we have. One thing that I do think is gonna happen for sure is we're finally gonna get rid of Fusion drives. Now, if you're not familiar with a Fusion drive, well, one, you're very lucky because it's 2020 and you shouldn't need to be familiar with a Fusion drive because they're ancient technology and they have no place in $1,000 to $2,000 desktops. You have to pay extra for a 256 gigabyte SSD in 2020. So I think given that Apple has been increasing their default capacities lately, I think it's likely that at the very least we're gonna ditch the Fusion drives. But here's the thing, if you take out the option to put a hard drive in an iMac, then you end up with a hole where the iMac could go. And that is just begging to be filled with, at the very least, a different internal design. Maybe we get dual cooling fans, maybe we get bigger speakers, maybe we can spread the computer out, slim down the back a little bit or something. But I cannot fathom a world where Apple updates the iMac, removes the option for a hard drive, and then leaves a hole on the inside where a hard drive could go. That would be the laziest, most half-assed attempt at a design upgrade that I have ever seen, and this clip is going to age really badly if they actually do that. So I'm cautiously optimistic about this year's iMac, and I think it's going to be coming pretty soon. Alright, so the next Apple product that you should not buy is the iPad Pro. Now, the iPad Pro was updated very, very recently, but you shouldn't buy it, and there's two main reasons. One, why would you buy? It's so similar to the 2018. Why do you need dual cameras on an iPad? Just buy a 2018 on clearance or refurbished or used and save some money. They're basically the same thing. And two, apparently, either at the end of this year or the beginning of next year, there's going to be a new, much improved iPad Pro, hopefully with a mini LED display. That I am excited for. Personally, I see the iPad Pro as more of an accessory, so I don't like to spend more than $400 or so on one, but for a lot of people, an iPad is a primary device. And the iPad Pro, the 2018 one, is fantastic, but it could definitely use some modernization. An A14 Bionic chip with more performance to enable the heavier and more demanding tasks that people are starting to do on their iPads these days, as well as having the mini LED display technology, those would be some pretty noticeable upgrades, and I think that's probably worth waiting for, especially if you're part of this increasing demographic of people that are spending $1,000 plus. If you're spending that much money on an iPad, you want to make sure that that's going to last you and stay relevant. The fourth Apple product on our list is the Mac Mini. Definitely a bit of a weird situation with the Mac Mini, which was actually updated exactly when the 2018 iPad Pro came out. So what is that, October 2018, coming up on 2 years ago? And it hasn't been touched since. I mean, if you go on Apple's website, it says new by the Mac Mini, but all they did was double the storage options, which is good, but it's not new. And this is a really tough spot because the problem is with other Apple products, you have some options. If you need to buy an iPhone right now, you can find something refurbished, maybe you can get a used iPhone XS or something, you've got some wiggle room. The Mac Mini is not very flexible because there's not a lot of models out there. If you want anything that's decently powerful, you have to buy the current one, the 2018, because previously, before 2018, they were all just dual cores. And that model was 2014 to 2018, didn't get changed. It was absolute garbage. It just sat there waiting to die. And you can get a quad core one if you go for 2012, and I made a video about that, but they're not super powerful and they're really overpriced because people know that you don't have a lot of options. So if you want a decently powerful Mac Mini and you want to do an eGPU setup or something, you have to buy a 2018, and because they haven't been updated, they're really expensive, and they shouldn't be. We're talking about nearly 2-year-old computers, and they have barely depreciated. If you own one, that's good news, because that means that you maybe lost $150 in owning your Mac Mini for almost 2 years. That's incredible, make no mistake. But the problem is, you're still looking at about $1,000 if you want to get the 6-core i5, and that's exactly what it costs to buy one new. And now, because of the storage options doubling, buying used basically doesn't save you any money. And that's a shame because we really don't have any idea if or when there's going to be a new Mac Mini. Now, the fact that Apple put new and technically pretended that they released a new product when they doubled the storage, that discourages me because that seems like sort of a way of saying, oh, we updated it, let's give it another year, they won't notice. So it's entirely possible that a year could go by before we see a new Mac Mini. It's also possible that Apple is waiting on updated processors that would make sense for that computer and will put that in a future Mac Mini. Now, the way that we'll be able to judge if this is likely is based on what happens with the smaller iMac. The smaller iMac and the Mac Mini pretty much share the same processors. We saw this happen in 2019 when the 21.5-inch iMac adopted the processors from the 2018 Mac Mini, pretty much the same configurations and layout. And so if we see a new iMac come out with updated processors, then I could see a late year Mac Mini refresh with those better processors. And that would be a big bump because not only would that offer you better performance in a newer model, but it would also cause the older ones to depreciate, which means the used market would be better as well. So I'm hoping that that's gonna happen because I really want to like the 2018 Mac Mini. It's just a little bit too expensive and not a very good value right now. And our final Apple product that you should avoid right now, this one might be a little bit weird, but a expensive 13 or 16-inch MacBook Pro. Expensive is important there because people that are out there shopping for the high-end stuff are people that are out there like, I want to buy the computer for the next 5 to 8 years of my life. I don't want to look at another computer. I don't want to buy another computer. This is it. I'm going all in. So if you're going all in right now, $4,000, $3,000 on one of these MacBooks, you might want to be a little bit cautious. Obviously, if you need one right now, the 13 and 16-inch MacBook Pros are great, and you won't regret it. However, if you want to maximize your purchase, it's looking increasingly likely that at the end of this year, we'll get a 16-inch MacBook Pro with mini LED displays. And it's also seeming like at the beginning of next year, probably around March or April, we'll get a 14-inch MacBook Pro with mini LED display. Now, I know a lot of people that were disappointed this year when the 13-inch was a pretty minor update will like to hear that, because the 14-inch is something that we've all been wanting for, well, pretty much as long as we've been wanting the 16-inch. So the goal is, if you are buying a computer that you want to keep for a really long time and you want to maximize your purchase, you might want to wait, especially with the 16-inch, because we're sort of on that threshold between it's new enough that it's not going to get updated for a while and there's probably going to be an update soon. Now, Apple has recently been paying more attention to the MacBook Pro, and in the past 4 years, we have had an update at least once a year. 2016, 2017, 2018, and then another little one in 2018, then 2 in 2019. So there's definitely, at some point in the next 6 months, going to be a new 16-inch MacBook Pro. It might just be a spec bump, it might have mini LED, who knows? But either way, if you're dropping a ton of cash, we're nearing the point where you might want to just wait or buy used. I also want to clarify that for this entire video, we're not just talking about things that affect new Apple customers, because whenever there's a new Apple product, it causes depreciation down the line. All right, so those are my thoughts on the 5 Apple products that you should avoid right now. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Hopefully this video was informative or helpful if you're looking to make a purchase right now, or if you're just curious about what's coming up soon in the world of Apple. As usual, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Please follow me on Twitter at Luke Miani, and don't forget to check out my subreddit, which is linked in the description below. And with that, I will see you all in the next video.